What's going on, guys? Welcome back, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on a film that I've been wanting to talk about for like a year, and I wanted to talk about it last year when A Quiet Place 2 was going to come out, but then COVID happened and it got canceled, so now I'm back and I'm going to actually be making a video on the first A Quiet Place film directed by John Krasinski. Now, I wanted to watch this film last year, and I did watch it because I had heard like amazing things about it. It was extremely popular. People were saying it's like one of the best, horror suspense movies ever made. I'm not really a horror person, but I heard it wasn't necessarily that scary of a movie. It's kind of more tension based than it is horror based. There isn't anything like gratuitous or like extremely violent in it, and I mean there is violence, but most of it's off screen and stuff like that. So I was like, I'll watch it. And I really thought it was lame. I really didn't think it was that good of a movie, and I was just shocked that so many of these people online that I actually rely on to be kind of my ears and kind of my my viewpoints on things. Like I usually kind of depend on people like Chris Stuckman and like a lot of these like other kind of film reviewer YouTubers who I think are usually pretty smart and analyze things in a rather intelligent manner. They all liked this movie, and when I watched it, I just saw, like, a really poorly constructed film. I didn't think it was very good as a movie, and I was just not really impressed with it on any level. I'll talk about what I like about it. Emily Blunt is great in this movie. I think most of the actors are good, like the actor who plays their son or their older son. He played Jack Will in the film Wonder from a couple years ago, based on the book by R.J. Palacio, and he's a good actor. I think the actress who plays their daughter, who is deaf in the film and in real life, I think she's also a pretty good actress. I think John Krasinski is probably a really good actor. This might be kind of a problem, like one of those things that comes about as a result of a director inserting himself into their own film. But I don't think any of the actors were particularly bad. I think it's I think it's just, the script, and just I think the writing is really the worst part of this film, because the film on paper is cool. Like one of the things I like about it is I like the direction. I like kind of the atmosphere and the setting of being, just a farmhouse. Like it's a movie about evil, or not evil, but like crazy aliens that can sense sense sound or whatever, and they'll come freaking kill you. And I like the setting of it. Usually these are like big apocalyptic or whatever movies, but this one it's about like a family living on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and I like that kind of setting, but I don't think it's executed well. I think it's just the biggest problem is the writing. I think the score by, I believe, Marco Beltrami, I think he was one of the artists who worked on the score for Ford vs. Ferrari, another film that I really enjoyed. His score lends itself very well to the film and adds tension in where I feel tension otherwise wouldn't really be felt as strongly without his score, so I'll give him credit on that. And that's pretty much most of the positives. I think Emily Blunt was the strongest actor in the movie. I think she did a really excellent job. She was easily my favorite character in the film because she was actually kind of one of the smarter characters, and she actually took initiative. And I guess, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film, towards the end of it, she does end up taking out kind of the main alien that had been chasing them around throughout the film. So, gotta give her credit for that. That was a pretty badass moment, I will admit. But besides her, and then kind of just the atmosphere, the direction, stuff like that, I just find the film to be really flat. Like, I think it just falls flat in general. I don't think it's that investing, and now we're gonna kind of go into the bad. I think the writing in this movie is just not very good. It's one of those films that bugs me where people are gonna defend it and say, oh, it's a fictional movie, you gotta just excuse the plot holes and stuff like that. But the thing is, I want a film that makes up its own rules. Like, this film has no real scientific, has no base in scientific reality at all. It's a fictional movie about aliens running around killing people because they hear sound. Like, the film has to make up its own rules. And its rules it's not really even consistent with its own rules, and its rules don't really make sense. Like, there are multiple examples in the film where the characters make sound that would probably attract the monsters, and where the monsters just conveniently don't show up. And then there's also just, like, moments, like, where John Krasinski takes his older son to go, like, fishing or something, and they go out to the river, and then he's able to talk to him rather than use sign language because the waterfall is extremely loud and drowns out their sounds so the aliens can't attack them. But then later in the film, the house just conveniently starts flooding, and then Emily Blunt hides her and her newborn baby behind this kind of small leak in the ceiling, and that is able to hide them from the detection of the alien. Okay, a giant waterfall that makes a lot of sound, I can get that. But a little bit of, like, water when you have a crying infant next to you, I don't think that's going to work. And then from the trailers for the second movie that's coming out or whatever, apparently it can now sense people through water or something, because there's a shot in the trailer where it's coming through the waterfall or something and attacking them. So I guess that now isn't even consistent in terms of the first film and the second film. So, okay. So just stuff like that just really irritates me, how it's not really consistent with its own rules. And then I hear people praising one aspect of the film, which is the tension, you know. Oh, it's a really intense movie. And like I said, Marco Beltrami's score adds to the film and adds tension where there wouldn't be otherwise. But when looking at the film, just the way it's directed and kind of the events that lead to these kind of tension-filled moments, they're heavily contrived and don't even make sense. I already gave the example of the fact that the house randomly starts flooding towards the end of the movie, or like towards the... It's a relatively short movie. It's only an hour and a half, which I appreciate. It's like mercifully short. But, you know, towards the middle of the movie, the house randomly starts flooding for no prior reason. If they had a line earlier in the film, maybe they did. I don't remember. I from what I remember, there's no line in the film. I watched this film over a year ago, and it was taken off Netflix, and I can't watch it now. Like, I don't have access to any of the streaming services to rewatch it. So if I did have access to those services, I would rewatch it. But from what I remember from watching this film last year, and I analyzed it very heavily, I do not remember any lines hinting at the fact that there's something wrong with the piping in their house or their farmhouse or whatever. So randomly it just starts flooding so that we can have an intense scene where the alien is swimming around underneath the water and is attacking Emily Blunt and her newborn child. And it's just, like, so, like, contrived. Then another example is when Emily Blunt is going into labor with her new baby, and she's walking down or up the steps, I forget. I think she's going into the basement. Or maybe she's going up. I don't remember. It's one of the two, right? And she's going either up or down the steps, and then there's this nail, like, sticking through the floor that they set up earlier in the movie, and then she steps on it, and then she has to, like, hold in her scream or whatever, because, like, I mean, yeah, there's a nail stabbing through your foot. I mean, I've been there. That's a story that I haven't told before. I had a nail stabbed straight up through my foot. I screamed loudest I've ever screamed. It's not a very fun experience, but at the same time, it's not really logical in the context of the movie. Like, okay, here's the thing. I will give the film credit in that regard because in real life, I stepped on a nail that was kind of sticking up through the bottom of the wood. So that's not completely implausible, but, like, and maybe they kind of moved into that house, or maybe that's not actually their farmhouse. Maybe it's someone else's farmhouse and they didn't build it and they didn't know about the nail. So I guess there's kind of multiple things leading into that, like, okay. But still, why is the nail hammered up through the bottom of the step? Like, who did that? Who, like, deliberately hammered a nail through the bottom of the step so it's just there for Emily Blunt to step on in the middle of the movie? Like, it's so convenient. And it's like stuff like that where I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. But like I said, I'll give it credit. That can happen in real life, and it's possible that it wasn't even their farmhouse and they weren't aware of that. But they had been living there for a couple of years, apparently, in the context of the film. So, I don't know. It's just like, okay. And then another example is towards the middle of the movie once again, or maybe towards the end. towards the end of the film, John Krasinski and his kid are walking back from the river, like I talked about earlier in the film, like that scene where they're walking back home from the river, and they walk past this random house in the middle of the forest. There's this dead body, and then you see this old man, and it's like implied that it's the old man's wife, and she got killed by the alien. And he just walks up, and he's like standing there like blubbering, and he's about to scream, and then John Krasinski's like, "No, don't scream!" And then the guy screams, and then the monster kills him, and then they have to run away. But it's like, wait, so the guy just conveniently found his wife's body, like, but like, it seems like he'd just been standing there, so he just stood there waiting for someone to come past so he could scream at them? Or did he just conveniently find the dead body of his wife while John Krasinski and his son were walking past? I don't know, but either way, the film just keeps coming up with lame ways to incite tension. Throughout the entire film, it's just contrivance after contrivance, convenience after convenience, leading into tension. And I don't find a film intense if all of the tension, quote unquote, is built on nothing. It just happens because plot must progress. I can't get invested in the film in that regard. So to me, the main thing that people praise about the film, the tension, doesn't work. Then we have the family drama, which to me also doesn't work. I hear people saying, like, oh, it has a really great emotional core and the family drama is really good. I don't think it's that good, because basically the main kind of core of the film, I guess, is the bond or like kind of relationship that John Krasinski has with his daughter. It's set up early on in the film. They go to this store, and the youngest child, he's probably like 1 or 2 years old, or like, no, probably like 4 or something, he finds this toy that's loud, and then John Krasinski takes the batteries out and says you can't use it. So then the deaf child gives the kid back the kind of toy with the batteries, and then the kid turns on the toy when they're in the middle of the forest, and the kid gets killed by a monster. So then throughout the film, John Krasinski like doesn't talk to his daughter and stuff like that, and his daughter kind of feels like he blames her for the death of their son. And then once again, halfway through the film, the scene I was talking about where John Krasinski takes his son to the river, his son goes, "Hey, I think she feels like you blame her," and he's like, "I don't blame her." And it's like, well, why didn't you tell her that then? Because you can obviously tell that she's like feeling really bad. Like, why didn't you tell her that like years ago or whatever if you never blamed her for it, you know? Like, it's just so like John Krasinski's just kind of being an ass. And then his daughter is also like acting like John Krasinski doesn't love her or something, even though at the beginning of the film they have a scene where he is continually trying to make a new hearing like aid device for her, and she just goes, "No, frick you, Dad, your inventions never work, it never works every time," or whatever. And she's like kind of flipping out at him because he's actually trying to help her out, but she's just deciding not to acknowledge it and is just getting pissed off at him. And then they try to make this emotional scene at the end of the film where she like discovers, like, at the end of the film they have to escape from the monster, and then they go into the garage, and then when they're in the garage, the kid or the daughter sees all of the kind of inventions that her dad has been working on, and she sees like the new like hearing aid and all these things that he's been kind of experimenting with to try and help her hear better. And then it's like supposed to be this emotional moment where it's like, oh, John Krasinski did care about his daughter, but it's like, yeah, we already knew that. Like, we already knew that he was trying to help her. She knew that he was trying to help her, but she just decided to ignore it and decided to be an asshole. So then John Krasinski is like trying to be nice to his daughter, trying to help her out, but then she's like, oh, my dad doesn't love me. And then they try to have the emotional core like revolve around this scene where he has to sacrifice himself, and he goes, I love you. And then she sees, oh, he really did care about me because he was trying to help me with my hearing problem or whatever. But it's like, no. Like that's not like if you could literally just rewrite the movie and cut out that scene where she gets pissed off at him for trying to help her, and then you could play it up like John Krasinski is like an absent-minded father, and he's like paying attention to everyone except his daughter, and then you could have it be like, okay, the daughter feels like the dad is ignoring her, and then you could have this thing where John Krasinski throughout the film is like you don't actually know what he's doing. You feel like he's absent-minded, but then towards the end he makes the sacrifice, and then you see that he's been working on this thing to try and help her this entire time. But the thing is, they already told us at the beginning of the movie that he was trying to help her. So when they reveal it, it's like it rings hollow. Like, I remember watching it and being like, I feel no emotion right now. Like we already knew this. So if they played it up in the film like John Krasinski was the one being an asshole, and his daughter felt like he blamed her, and then you have the moment where he goes, I love you, and then it is revealed that he was actually trying to help her and make a new hearing device for her the entire time, then that would have some emotion to it. Because it's like John Krasinski did care the entire time, and you could actually play up the fact that he's like an absent-minded father, he's an absent parental figure, and he's not really there for her. And you don't make her kind of an asshole as well, because they have her like freak out at him early in the movie, like, oh, your inventions never work, like something like that. Like, just cut that out, because then that makes it seem like both characters in the equation are just being like assholes to each other, and I don't really want to see it resolved. So like throughout the film, I didn't really care about them. And then even John Krasinski, they try to make it seem like he's this really smart character, but he just kind of makes stupid decisions. Like halfway through the movie, he leaves his kids out in the middle of like the farm field with the alien out there with fireworks when he goes in to save Emily Blunt. He goes to save his wife. Then they end up being safe, and they're in the basement, and then she goes, did you leave our kids out in the middle of the farm field with the aliens? And he's like, yep. And she's like, you're a moron, go get the kids, basically. I'm just like, okay, well, thank you. Well, she doesn't say that exactly. She's like, go get our kids. But I'm like, that was just such a dumb decision. Like, if he really knows his wife, then he should probably know that she's resourceful and she'd make her way out of that. Like, your kids are, like, defenseless. Like, you should focus on protecting your kids. And they try to kind of redeem that by having him save them in the end. But, like, I just couldn't care less. Like, John Krasinski seems like an asshole and an idiot. And I don't relate to or care or feel anything for his character at all. So when he dies, I'm like, okay, whatever. Sorry, plot device. Like, I didn't feel bad for him. I didn't care about his daughter either, because once again, they kind of made her seem like she didn't really care about the effort her dad was putting in early in the film, so I just didn't really care about her either. So the main emotional core of the film rings hollow to me, and you could have just restructured the movie a little bit, cut out that scene where she freaks out at her dad, and then you could actually have a nice emotional through line. But the thing is, they have that scene early on that just ruins that emotional core. Like, there's no impact because we already knew. There's no twist there. It's just like, it's not like the daughter for the first time is realizing that her dad was trying to help her. She already knew that, so I don't know why they make it like, oh wow, my dad cared about me the whole time. Like, yeah, no shit, we knew that. Like, it's just, it rings so hollow. And then even kind of the main thing that people praise about the movie as well, the alien. There's no real suspense around the alien. We see it multiple times. We don't really see it up close until the last scene of the movie, but we see it multiple times, like in broad daylight throughout the film, so we know like kind of the general shape. We know what it looks like. So the tension is kind of ruined in that regard, and when we do see it, it doesn't look very good. Like, if you wanted to kind of make it like a suspense movie, never really show the monster until the last scene. And you could say that they do that, but they do show it in like faraway shots, and it's like up front and center. So like, we already know what it looks like, and then so when we see it at the end, it's like, okay, we get a more detailed up close look. But even then, it doesn't look that good. It looks like a bad CG creation. And that's the thing. John Krasinski made this film, like, from what I understand, with a pretty low budget. So he didn't have the budget to make, like, a big budget monster thing. So it feels like he kind of overcompensated and went a little bit too far. Like, he went beyond his limitations and tried to make the monster. So then the suspense is also ruined for me because they show the monster too much and it doesn't look good. It looks like fake CGI. So in my brain, I'm like, oh no, the fake CGI blob is trying to kill them. I don't really care. Like, that's the thing, is like, that's my problem with the film. Like, you can say that, I guess, about most horror movies, and I'm not like a horror movie person, so maybe that's why. Maybe because no matter how many horror movies you make, they're just eventually going to fall back into the same tropes. Because this film is just so tropey and like cliche in so many ways, and I just didn't care about it. So that's kind of a lot of the bad things about the movie. Like, the main things that people praise about it: the tension, the suspense, the character drama, the family drama. the emotion at the core of the film. All of it rings hollow because of the writing. And from what I understand, this film was written by John Krasinski and one other person. So maybe the other person that was writing with him was the person who had the most kind of creative control, even though I find that unlikely because Krasinski directed it and, like, partly wrote it as well. So I'd assume that he had, like, the most creative input in terms of the writing. So if in some way the other guy who was working on the film with him, I don't remember his name, if in some way he had more of an impact on the overall way that the script turned out, maybe since the second film that's coming out now is just all John Krasinski and he's writing it, maybe it'll be better than the first one. But also, a sequel has to depend on the setup of the first film to actually be good, and I don't feel like the second film will be really an improvement, because, like, in order for a sequel to be good, like I said, the first one had to have been good as well. In this case, I don't think the first one was good. So I'm gonna read reviews, I'll see what happens with the second one, and maybe I'll watch it at some point, but I'm not rushing out to see it, because I just don't really care. But I guess that's pretty much it on my problems and the things that I like about the movie. Once again, they're very surface level, but I guess just going into the conclusion here, I'm gonna quote one of the most underrated movies that I really like, Solo: A Star Wars Story. I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but I accept it. And that's kind of how I feel about this film. I respect John Krasinski and what he did. That doesn't mean I have to like it. I respect all filmmakers for the most part, unless they're like creepo people like Michael Bay. John Krasinski seems like a good guy. He seems like a good actor. He can probably direct things well. Most of the directing in this movie is pretty solid. I think he can do well. I just don't think that this was the right concept, or like it was an interesting concept, but it wasn't the right execution for that concept, and I don't think he quite had the budget and whatever else to really bring it to life. I think he kind of overcompensated a little bit, went beyond his bounds, and it ended up just kind of being a mess. And maybe if he has more creative control over the second one, like he has complete creative control over the second one, like I said, maybe just from a film plot perspective, a lot of it will be better. But I don't find that likely, like I said. But the main thing that I will take away from this film, and the main thing that I think is kind of inspiring about it, is the fact that this film was something that a guy, John Krasinski, was working on, low-budget movie, and it ended up becoming, like, the next big hit movie. Like, it was a really popular movie, even amongst people who aren't horror fans. I know a lot of people who aren't horror fans who liked this movie. It's inspiring to me that, you know, people like me, as, like, a person who makes animations, video production, stuff like that, it's very inspiring to me to see, you know, hey, no matter how small your budget is, no matter how, like, you know, whether you have, like, a big billion-dollar Avengers budget, or if you have, like, I don't know, a relatively low, in the $1,000 range budget, you can still make a big hit movie. And I think that John Krasinski, you know, he tried his best. He overstepped his bounds, but, you know, he was trying to be creative, he was trying to be cool. And there's something inspiring about just seeing how well this film turned out, like, in terms of how popular it was and the impact it had on moviegoers. Just, there's something about it that I respect and that I find inspiring. That does not mean that I have to like the film, because I don't. I think it's a really messy, poorly constructed movie. Like I said, the main aspects, the character drama, and the tension don't work. I think Emily Blunt is the best thing about this movie, and the direction, and the atmosphere, the setting. The film on paper, I think, is cool. The execution, not so much. So, you guys please let me know what you think of A Quiet Place. Do you agree with my points? Do you disagree? Are you going to go see A Quiet Place 2? Or are you not going to go see A Quiet Place 2? Just let me know whatever you thought on this video in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.